All right. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, everybody. I am extremely excited, honored, humbled to have with us today, not only, of course, great friends of the show, Nils and Riel, but Brandon from the Expanding Reality podcast. I think last time Brandon was on was give or take 3, 4 months back, and we had an absolutely fantastic conversation to the point where, I mean, it even almost, I think it's one of the most viewed episodes on our channel without any promotion or anything like that, just because of the quality of what, Brandon was speaking about. But without further ado, Brandon, brother, how are you?
I'm doing wonderful. Every day above ground's a great day. And I'm going to say, first of all, that conversation was amazing. It was easily one of my favorites as well. And the reason it was so is because you were such a great host. You guys just set up a platform to where we could just go for it. And that's something that can't be overlooked. Yeah, I've got some cool things to say, but if it's not prodded and, steered in the right direction, it's nothing like what it turned out to be. So actually, you are at least half credit, brother. So thank you for the wonderful conversation.
I appreciate that so much. Thank you. And of course, Nils, did you want to say hi to everybody, and then Riel as well?
Whatever. What up, everyone?
Yep,
Great to be
super happy
here.
to be here. Looking forward to the chats. And I completely agree with what you said, Brandon. Dave deserves so much props and credit for building this platform and giving the opportunity for people like yourself to share. And he is excellent at prodding and asking those questions to, inspire the conversation, and super open-minded and humble too.
I appreciate that so much, guys. Thank you so much to all three of you, really. So okay, Brandon, we honestly, it's I don't really, generally speaking, I don't really plan questions per se. Sometimes I do, but in this case, I simply haven't because, man, there's so much to delve into. I don't even need to write it down, in my opinion. So first and foremost, I know that obviously when we speak of one thing leads to another. So what do you see happening right now compared to when we spoke 3, 4 months ago? Not just with Ukraine, things like that, but with respects to the I guess you could say the state of people's consciousness. What do you personally feel, so to speak? What do you observe? What do you see happening globally right now? Do you see things moving in a good direction, negative, or do you see sort of what I generally have coined lately calling a beautiful shit show?
I like the beautiful shit show. I am a chronic optimist, and you know this about me. So I only see wonderful things. That's what I've designed my eyes to see, and that's how I view the world. So I see the oligarchs losing it. I see them in the last desperate few moves of a game that they know they're losing, and I think that that's what the shakeup is. I think it's more of a stirrup to just rattle everybody's cage as much as possible for those who participate in it. I must put that caveat in there. And for those of us who don't, from my perspective, the other side of your question, what I see most of is people waking up. I get emails and beautiful messages all the time. Just, hey, oh my God, I found your show. Oh my God, I'm going through this awakening. Oh my God, I didn't know. And it's amazing. So, really, the inundation of that is what I'm way more focused on, just simply because like attracts like. That's what I attract into my life. That's where my focus is. And your attention's your currency. So, I don't waste it on things that aren't productive for me.
Okay, now speaking of intention, I wanted to ask you because we touched on this very heavily last time, but I think like what I've been doing lately myself is exploring more of physics and things called intuitionistic mathematics, and I'll explain shortly. I'd like to ask your take on all that, but do you, so presuming, not assuming, but presuming that our species, say, has been in this sort of cycle before, whether we want to incorporate the ET angle or not, do you see enough of I guess you could say, not so much a positive intent, but do you see enough of an intent to drive a new paradigm that would benefit the masses? Or do you still see those at the top clinging, maybe losing some of that power, but still clinging enough to sort of control our intent?
So, do you mind if I give you a pretty long answer to this? Because
Please,
I've actually
please,
got something I'd like to say about it.
as
So,
long as you like, please.
fair dinkum. So, what I will say about this is an example came across my perception recently, about a month or so ago, and I've been just obsessed with it. And the idea goes is that we talk a lot of woo, and you guys do this as well, and because it's fascinating and amazing, and we just don't really know, right? But those kind of concepts and ideas are interwoven through this entire thing like a big tapestry. And so when you zoom out of it a little bit, I was finally at the point in my conscious awareness where this came across and it mirrored back to me. Because again, I look at this place like it's a mirror. So everything you see out there is a reflection of you or what you're ready to hear. When the student's ready, the master appears. All that
Brother,
kind of
I'm so sorry. Is there a way that you can just tune up very slightly the when you're
yeah.
talking to the mic just a little louder, if that's all right?
Not at all. How's this? Is this better?
Perfect. Thank you. Please carry on.
Okay.
So sorry.
Yeah, nope. Thank you for catching me. I appreciate it. So one of the things that I've been looking at through this was this video that this guy had on TikTok. I wish I knew the name of the guy. I would credit him. I just haven't. If you guys find it, send it to me, expandingrealitypodcast.com. So this gentleman was explaining the difference between this idea of the third dimension, the fourth dimension, and the fifth dimension. Now, what's interesting about this is we hear about this, and this is what ties back to kind of the possibility of it being woo, and people look at it through that lens, which is fine. But the way this guy explained it really drove it home for me. So what he was explaining is that 3D, or the third D consciousness, is all that it is. It's a consciousness. These are the sheeple. These are the people, just to put in an example, that only see what the official story is, and they say, yep, that's exactly what it is. And anyone that says anything altered to that is what the official story says they are: conspiracy theorists. They're loons. They're out of their mind. They're against. You are over here. They are over there. More divisive tool. But it's just a state of consciousness. So he used geoengineering, so chemtrails. So from the 3D perspective, from the third point of view, people see chemtrails in the sky. And then they go, huh, that's interesting. Look at that long, cloud behind that airplane. And then they overhear, they see some crazy video from one of these conspiracy theorists that says, no, actually, that's a chemtrail, and they're spraying these chemicals on us, and it's geoengineering program, blah, blah, blah. So then they may, if we're lucky, Google it. And in Google, we know that there's a wonderful gatekeeping system that will pop up that says, you know what, they're just contrails. Here's the whole scientific argument about what they are. From that 3D perspective, that person is going to go, you know what? Satisfied answer from an official source that they trust anyway, because they can't see it any other way. Physically, they can't. And this other crazy person is a loon, and that's just the way that it goes. So that's where the story ends for that perception. Now, they can't understand what we see. We can't understand that they can't see it, right? This is where it comes from. Now, the fourth dimension is what's next. The 4D is a very dense dimension, even speaking spiritually. People like to talk about the split from the 3D to 5D. No one wants to talk about that fourth D in between because it's a very dense, heavy state. There's a big jump spiritually, mentally, emotionally, everything that occurs between the third and fifth dimension. So if we take our perception up a little bit, if you even question it, if you accidentally clicked on Frankensky's Matt Landman's video, then you might go, holy shit, okay, now I see it. Now you have snapped into the fourth dimension. Now you see things differently, and your world is never the same. I equate this to a tree house. If you're ascending a tree house with multiple levels, there's a trapdoor system. We're all familiar with this. You open the trapdoor to get onto the new level, which is in this case fourth dimension, and then the door shuts behind you, and there's no handle on the inside. You can't go back to the third dimension, as was it Cypher was talking about in the Matrix. He says, just plug me back in. I don't want to remember anything. You can't. So that's the way that awakening goes. You're awake now. So whenever you're in the fourth dimension, you see it, you see those chemtrails, and you say, you know what, they are chemtrails. They are lying to us. The geoengineering program has been going on for decades. Even when you look at Nuremberg codes and you say, well, they couldn't do that. Well, the way that works is Nuremberg Code states that they can't do it to another country. So countries just do it to their own people. That's how they do it. So, and you see this, and this is your Paul Revere phase, by the way, guys. This is where you go, you got to look at this video about Building 7, and it wouldn't do that, and look at Ruby Ridge, and I can't believe that you guys can't see this. It's very fear, but it's full of a lot of awarenesses. So you're now uncovering truths that were there the whole time, but hidden from you in the third dimension because you couldn't see it. You just physically couldn't. So from there, you move on to the fifth dimension, the Dolores Cannon idea of that's where you want to go. Now, some people equate this to portals opening up, and you're going to slip into this bitch. And then, the people who didn't have all the right crystals, or the people who believed in Jesus and they were wrong, and they're going to stay in the third dimension, which is heavy and dense, and we want to leave it because it's shit. All of these kind of ideas, in my mind, I don't speak for anyone else, ring a lot of religious tones. And that's why I'm a big fan of spirituality, is because it's not religious. And so whenever people start talking about portals and stuff like that, I mean, as badass as that would be, never rang the bells for me. And so with this perception concept of viewing it this way, makes things so much easier, so much more grounded, so much more understandable. Because even explaining something like the fifth dimension, which is where now you see all of those things, but they're not horrible. There's no fear there. You see them as opportunities. Okay, well, now let's get together. Let's band. I'm going to take care of my own garden. I'm going to do my own thing. This is where the fifth dimension is. And you don't worry about, you know, all of that stuff just because it's not in your paradigm. And again, just like the Ukraine thing, it's a desperate act. How I see it from the fifth dimension is it's a desperate act of a dying beast that's just on its last throw. So it's trying to get as many, I guess, souls, if you want to say that, or push the game out a little further as far as it can. And that's where it leaves my mind. I'm like, oh, you know, oh wow, a butterfly. Like, I'm okay. Well, let's go do something cool in real reality that's really fun for me, not something that's yelling at me from my loosh. You know what I mean? So
Couldn't
that
agree
whole
more.
example changed my entire perception on this whole damn thing. This is why, like, I don't get frustrated with people who just can't see the truth. I'm not gonna, you know, yell at my mom for not getting that. You know, what's going on here is obviously what's going on here, like from our point of view, because there's no point in it. You know, there's not that it's. I don't want to say that I've like given up on speaking the truth and standing up for rights and sovereignty, because I haven't. Obviously, that's very much my position. What I have let go of is the toxicity that was stuck in me of trying to yell at everyone of what was going on and to wake them up to frustrated ends. I'm yelling, you know what I mean? And you can equate the third dimension to trying to explain a mortgage to a 3-year-old. You know, they can't grasp it. They don't understand the monetary system. They don't get it, man. You know, it's what's the point, right? It's not your audience. You know what I'm saying?
If you
So I
if you can't
prefer to be a lighthouse.
so I was just gonna say you can't bring the horse to water. Sorry, you can bring the horse to water. You can't make it drink. And if you put a gun to its head, what's the point?
You've got it. It doesn't, yeah, it doesn't resonate. And so this spent action on, you know, waking people up, I guess, forcibly, or just like, you got to pay attention to this. I mean, anything from my perception, again, anything in life that's yelling at me to pay attention to it is something I don't participate in. I don't have notifications on any of my social media apps. I will look at you when I want to look at you. Your attention is the only valuable thing that you have in this place. So spend it on what you want. Spend it on the things that give you joy and happiness and raise your vibration if that's what we are here to do, or just at least don't make you stressed out and fearful, you know, because you do have control over that.
Wow, I couldn't agree more. Very well said. I appreciate that answer so very much. Riel, did you want to jump in?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks. Yeah, Brandon, fantastic way to start this discussion here. So I got a few points that I just wanted to comment on. I love chronic optimist. I refer to myself as a cosmic optimist in our discussion with James Iandoli, and that's, you know, very similar parallels. And I totally agree with you about the elite's last stand, predatory class last stand, as we're seeing in Canada, where the three of us and Jen said are currently residing. And with the Emergency Measures Act, clearly they're like grasping at straws to just keep that stranglehold. I also just did a presentation with Dave about explaining the macro financial institutions and how things are shifting from the west to the east, and just how, you know, the speculation that the shift to digital currency is really like them trying to just keep a hold of the power that they've got. And then also, I wonder your thoughts on the idea. This is something from a video on Gaia, actually, I just listened to. The idea that everything in our universe is actually 5D, but the Earth right now is actually got a quarantine of 3-dimensional reality, so that we are currently living in the 3D, but everything outside of this quarantine, which allegedly is the Van Allen belt, which adds a whole nother thing of like, ooh, why is that thing there? Why is that causing radiation? Why is that the reason we can't actually go to space? Now that is actually the metaphysical quarantine that's keeping us in that lower density, lower vibration. But apparently the veil is shifting, the Dracos have been kicked out, things are kind of, we're emerging to this new shift in consciousness that's inevitable. But as we're seeing all the stuff with the, I don't know what platforms is going to be on, but just the jabs basically keeping us in a suppressed lower state. So yeah, those things. And then also the concept of, well, so I like that you avoid the things that yell at you, but I wonder your take on perceiving signs and symbols and synchronicities.
Can I just say,
the universe trying to communicate.
Thank you so much for asking the way that you did, particularly the metaphysical quarantine, because that's going to add to what I want to ask Brandon.
Absolutely.
Right on. Yeah, you're very welcome.
So I love, and great question, by the way. I love the idea of all of it, actually. So I'm fine with if all of this stuff is what's going on, right? Now, as far as what I think about signs, synchronicities, those are subtle. They're quiet, but they stand out to you, and they're very personal. The things that speak to everyone on a massive level, Man, okay, so I could say this too. Like one thing I really pay attention to are the way I feel about the things that I'm interpreting. Now, this isn't like a triggered like a I don't know how to explain it without it sounding um
I get it. I know what you're saying.
you know what I mean? So okay,
There's a
we'll just assume that you guys all know what I'm
there's
talking about.
there's
So
physics behind this. We'll talk about this after.
that is what it is, and I was attempting to bridge the gap, but we'll do it here in a minute, and I like that. Thank you, Dave. So really with this, the synchronicities are what pop out, and they're beautiful, and they're all very personal to you. The wide scope things that yell at you that are like, hey, do this, you can know what you're not by then just going the other direction. So this is usually the way that my intuition works. It's not that I have all the answers, because I really don't feel like I have any, to be honest with you. I do know what I'm not, and that to me is as good of a compass as any. And I think that that is enough for you to resonate towards. A lot of people worry about what am I? What am I? You know, who am I? Like when people ask you, you know, who are you? You usually answer with your occupation. Some people do, but that's really not who you are. That's not what defines you. That's what the 3D matrix defines you as. And so even just relating to yourself in that way is a good calibration for you to figure out what you are and what you're not. The things that you don't want to be a part of, the predatory classes we were talking about, this is not us. So we know that it's maybe not correct, but it's definitely at least not for us. That's where I go with it. And the signs and synchronicities that have pulled me out of this thing, that have shown me the way, really, are just you. You know, I've got a big picture version of this, and there are many levels on this that we can talk about. So if you talk about Dracos, if you talk about this elite class, at a level, with this understanding, it's you. So with this awakening and with everything, one could say that in this density, one idea that I've heard is that God separated itself out so much to experience itself, and now it's ready to collapse in and gather all that information out. Either because it spread itself too thin and kind of lost a little bit of control is one idea. I don't necessarily think that it perhaps can get into an uncontrollable situation, but I've got other thoughts on that, but honestly, no hard evidence. So, but a lot of people say that this is what we're doing now, is we're all collapsing in on ourselves. Or like, let's explain it like the Big Bang, and then it's collapsing back in on itself, right? It's not necessarily expanding, it's collapsing back in. So if consciousness is bringing all of its parts together, it does this through unification. Now, one interesting way that you can do something is by forcing the opposite, which is why this division, this divide and conquer, this more than ever is ramping up to divide everyone in every way. Well, that is actually ipso facto bringing us together. It's kind of this reverse psychology thing, because it's really banding all of us together that are ready to hear this information and move forward. As far as we're 5D living in a 3D consciousness, I think it's all here. Now, we could really go far with that conversation because it goes really deep, and to answer it properly we would have to, I guess, just make sure that we are mindful of how people view their reality. So if you view this place as a realm or as a flat plane, perhaps the Van Allen radiation belts would be this energetic layer or dome or an out of bounds area, because you're here to learn what's here for you to learn. So basically it's an isolated environment, let's say, and on the outside of that is another dome or an energetic barrier that is perhaps a higher vibration or a higher density, a higher vibration. And then if you move out from that, this is where the idea of like extra land and concentric rings on a flat earth or a realm kind of a place looks like. If we're talking ball, then yeah, if you're intergalactic and this is some sort of place to where it seems to be we're supposed to be here. And we're supposed to be focused here. We're designed to be here. Even when you look at things as deep as Gaiography, as Peter Shampoo talks about, as the vibrational resonance of us in relationship to Gaia, then this idea that we're going to go to Mars is pretty far-fetched at that point, because you have to resonate at the frequency of the planet that you're at. It's kind of a call signature as the idea goes. So again, this can go really deep, and I hope that maybe touched on the surface of it a little bit.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you so much. And I totally agree that, like, I'm testing the waters with with that kind of question. And absolutely, we could go deep into, the realms and, the different cosmogonies of the earth, and really breaking down what is reality from all these different, speculative things. But just to confirm, did you say Gaiography?
Okay, so there's a guy named Peter Shampoo. Have you guys ever heard of him?
No.
I have, but nothing to say that I know his work.
He wrote a few books, but he has coined the term Gaiography. And he does this by, he's a geomancer. So he runs around, he's written incredible books. There's 3 of them. This is just one of them. And he has all these fascinating maps. I've had him on the show. There you go. So he's got these really cool maps. It's just a really cool way of going about it. And Gaiography, I call it that now, just based on Peter Champous's work.
So it sounds like it's something similar to ley lines.
Yes, exactly. Exactly what it is.
Right on.
Yeah, that's
And
just
like
kind of
Randall Carlson, he does a lot of that stuff with Graham Hancock. He's been on Greg Carlwood's show, Higher Side Chats. Similar. Okay.
Yes. And that's just his proprietary name for it. That's what he calls it. He's a very clever guy. Like I said, very creative. The way that even the attention to detail he invests in the reader's experience when reading his book, you could tell very creative, dude.
Well, let's go down that rabbit hole if you would like, guys, because Riel, just by total fluke, or maybe you can call it synchronicity, maybe not so much a fluke, that question is leading into what I actually had written down about 10 minutes ago. So this works out perfectly. So
I'd say we're on shareable waves, Dave.
I would say
Flow
I would
state.
tend to
Same
agree. So this is going to be, if you could just bear with me, Brandon, I'm going to share my screen with you. It's going to be a bit of a long-winded question, but again, we're going down long-winded thoughts, so might as well. Let's see here. So let me share my screen. I've recently been exploring the concept of ethereal software. Now, again, we can look at that as, the ether all around us, things like this. Now, what's interesting is that what we see here is this is magicofthought.com, commanding ethereal software. Once you connect to the ethereal software, you'll want to send it your intent. For example, make me successful in finding a job, or heal this person, and so on. There are lots of ways to send your intent. Now, what's interesting about this is that I wonder, okay, when Riel said that we may be metaphysically quarantined on this planet and everything else around us, around everything on this planet that's operating at a different frequency that we are not, and everything even outside the planet along with the cosmos is, for the sake of this argument, ascending, if you will. We can use different terms if you want to call it. Now, speaking of that, I wonder, you mentioned earlier, Brandon, religious tones. I wonder, do religious tones conflate into that of what physicists are, quote unquote, just now discovering, although I think it's been kept secret for a long time, which is quantum intent or quantum chaos, which is why people each see their own versions of, for example, when a lot of people have near-death experiences. Some people say they went into for example, a beautiful field of flowers, and they heard a voice that said, "It's not your time yet," and then they woke back up in the hospital bed. Many instances like this. And so I wonder, do religious tones conflate with quantum intent? And is it possible that because of what Riel said about the metaphysical entrapment, that we as a society are being pushed towards that metaphysical intent using ethereal software, because what's called sacred geometry, as I'm showing here on the screen for the audience, just some different images here and sketches, sacred geometry seems to be exactly what is right here. According to ScienceDaily.com, discovery of quantum vibrations in microtubules inside brain neurons supports theory of consciousness, or controversial theory. So I hope that's not too much of a long-winded question. But again, the concept of quantum intent, where scientists on the public level right now think, oh, it's quantum entanglement is great, but the problem is you can't control it. But what if you can, using ethereal software? I know that was quite a question, so please forgive me, but
no forgiveness needed, because it's the perfect question phrased in the perfect way with the perfect amount of information. So absolutely, dude. So church is a 3D structure. It is here to serve a purpose, to articulate deep spiritual concepts in a way that will resonate with a 3D point of view. So think of this like whenever you think of reading levels, okay? This is not a shot to anyone. This is just information at the point that they are at on their awareness. You could think of our souls as children going through this and experiencing. You don't know what you did when you were 5. You know way more. I know more now than I did an hour ago, right? So you're always a more improved version of yourself, ideally, or you're at least always a more cognizantly ready to receive information version of yourself. So, but there are some people that participate, and now this is where the intent part of it comes in. So I'm grateful that you said this. This is where, and again, when we were talking about consensus reality, this is why I say the things that I do about consensus reality, is because yes, it is super personal for you. Near-death experience is super personal. Psychedelic experience is super personal. interactions with contacts with extra non-human entities, super personal, different, varied. So these are the things. This is why whenever you get into concepts like quantum intent, this is where that idea of healing yourself now to heal past versions of yourself, and ideally, because of quantum entanglement, quantum intent means like the Lynn McTaggart studies with the power of 8. These are things that are very, very real. Placebo studies. It's been in our face the whole time. Ancient wisdom with the flower of life and with sacred geometry. I mean, this wisdom has been around us. What I love, though, is now science and spirituality are starting to come together. And it's when you marry this yin yang that's when we reach that next level. The reason I know this is occurring, just to finish on this point, is because science is starting to talk a lot about the simulation argument. What is the simulation argument but word trade outs for a creator or a omniconscious or a unity consciousness? You could always assemble them in that way. So in this way, the ideas are merging quite nicely, just with different vernacular. And people start to interchange the words, they're going to realize that we've been saying the same thing. We've all been walking each other home the same way, just using different words, and you're wearing a different set of glasses that give you a VR experience that's unlike anyone else's here.
Sort of like on a phone when, for example, you may have an app on your home screen laid out a certain way. I may have it a different way, but it's doing the same thing. We're both, say, heading to that same application, just different means of getting there. Right. I did want to ask, speaking of that concept of, again, the of quantum intent, quantum chaos, and, a consensus reality, which, by the way, fantastic conversation about that we had last time. Would this, in your humble opinion, would explain why, for example, I'm going to share my screen again for the audience. Would this possibly explain in your opinion, when we see things like sacred geometric symbols and things like this, why, for example, not so much mathematics, but physics cannot corroborate it, at least on a public level, because, quote unquote, it was never understood until now, possibly because of something larger than ourselves forcing us or giving our species a deadline, if you will. Now, I'm not trying to push that towards an ET angle. It could be anything at this point, but do you see what I'm saying here? This seems to be geometric shapes and symbolisms that cannot be described via that of the current understanding of physics deliberately, because it's almost for the past 80 to 100 years, we've deliberately been suppressed to not figure this out until now. And it seems that even up until now, our leaders who hold this knowledge don't even want to put it out, but it's almost as if they're being forced to put it out because of Riel's metaphysical quarantine the planet's on, or maybe in.
Yes. And you know what it feels like a lot of the time with this stuff is that they put out a little bit which resets our perspective. So now you've introduced a new concept that's mind-blowing that now you're tying into a lot of things. So it kind of, it slows you, it gives you pause. I'll put it that way. It gives you pause to reflect and integrate the new information into your paradigm to move forward. And it's almost like their distraction, right? It's almost like the Ukraine thing. Hey, look over here. Don't worry about anything else going over here, but look over here. Coronavirus. No, we're not doing that anymore. Don't worry about that, honey. Here. And so but it could be a spiritual version of that. I'm not saying that any of it's off the table. I think predictive programming happens on both sides. I think that there's a positive pole and a negative or a dense pole here, and that energies are constantly intermingling in this beautiful tapestry to allow you to align with either one of those in whatever vibrational state you gravitate towards. So it's always, both are always there and ready for you to receive, and you're going to gravitate towards one or the other, and that's what gives us this dualistic universe. This is also why I don't think that necessarily this place is going to ever be Eden. I don't think it's supposed to be. I think this is supposed to be a very dense place where we learn these things, where this constantly and perpetually just goes nuts. It's batshit here all the time because it has to be. This is where you get like the biggest up level. This is on the other side. You get that merit badge that says you went to Earth. You're dope. You're like the Marine. You're Black SEAL. Like you're a badass. So it's not the attempt to fix things here is your intent to direct cosmically and quantumly your experience here. And things will reflect that way in your life. But there's always probably going to be a level of dissonance here that you are never going to be able to eradicate. Sort of like whenever we go, man, it would be great if I didn't
what makes you think that? Genuinely asking, what makes you think there's a gap that can't be eradicated?
I don't think it's supposed to be. I think that whenever you look at this place, it's actually perfect. It balances out perfectly. Whenever, because if you at least look at it objectively, and when you zoom out far enough, it yeah, there's shit here that sucks. There's shit here that sucks really, really bad. But we are here to experience those things. This is from just a completely objective point of view.
Right.
But when you look at it that way, you can't be too hard on anyone else's decision. And this is like the way that they choose to live their life, even though it's different from you, or even if they don't want to pay attention, or yes, they got the jab, for whatever their reasons are, no matter how valid they are to you or not. It's all about how you interpret and manipulate the energies here. That's your job. That's what your thing is. Now, back to the sacred geometry, rolling out concepts like that have been under our noses the whole time. This is in deep math knows this. Crop circles have been showing us a lot of those exact patterns, if not at least one of all of them,
Right.
for decades now. And so all of this knowledge is here. The ancients knew it. What it feels like with this spiritual awakening, or this up level in all of us, is that we've kind of there's a new level that's unlocked here. Not all of us will jump in to explore it right away, because not all of us are ready.
A key's
Some
been
of us,
turned.
a key has definitely been turned. A
Right.
new trapdoor is open. There's new downloads, if you want to put it that way. There's new wisdom that we have exposure to, that we are now privy to. And so that's what it feels like. And then now we're integrating all of these things. And with the leaks, like what you're talking about, they're old. You know, they're siphoning out old stuff that we've known for a long time, but it kind of keeps you a little bit busy. This is why I say it's probably, spinning plates on both sides, but it's very necessary for your overall compendium of an experience here.
Would this part of this experience with this compendium of an experience, would this justify, I'm going to share my screen one more time. I'm just going to pull this up here really quickly. Would this justify both, I guess you could say, the beauty and the unfortunate aspects of it, which would be, for example, just to give some examples to the audience, this has been seen, these beings or plasma beings or entities, if you will, have been seen quite often lately, more and more in the skies, not nearly as much in high altitude as they used to be, closer to people's homes, things like that. For example, we see as well another image here, what seems to be, if you look close enough, what seems to be a face, a bipedal humanoid face inside of that, of actually a whole body really, inside of that of I guess you could say a plasma ball or sphere. You could see over here the legs, the two legs, the body, the torso, and the two eyes right there. Very, very interesting stuff. And finally, just to give a bit of a, to look at the other side of things as well, going back to that whole thing with chemtrails and all that, right? We see chemtrails resembling the Star of David or the pentagram, and their composition is, barium and aluminum, sort of linking in that whole esoteric occult angle going back many, many years, which we can argue a lot of the occult interpretations were arguably just that, interpretations of extremely advanced science, right?
Mm-hmm. For sure. Now, it's so interesting you put that last slide up, because just yesterday I saw an odd it's a chemtrail. I saw an odd chemtrail configuration, and I thought to myself, this is crazy we're doing this today. I thought to myself, how crazy would it be if what they're really doing is putting spells up there, or creating like some sort of grid. You know how in like Doctor Strange, they have those spells that float and they have different operations, and in magic you can have sigils. Maybe that's what they're doing. Maybe it's a signification of that, or a branding of the sky in some etheric way.
Would you, and maybe I'm pushing on this metaphysical quarantine a bit too much, but would you subscribe, not believe, but subscribe possibly ideologically to this being that of a metaphysical preservation to keep us in this dimension, not necessarily for bad intent, but simply because not enough of us are ready to move on or move up yet?
I'd say either one of those is absolutely possible. When you start looking at it from the angles and you start seeing the weird stuff, and this is again the thing, whenever you look at like politicians and you look at these just musicians and Hollywood people and all the crazy symbolism that we know that they're using, it's like, we know what you're doing.
Yeah.
When you come out and tell us that the C numbers were, on the very first day they started reporting cases, all the governors around were saying 33 cases, 33 cases, 33 cases. We get it, dude. It's some Mason shit. We get it. So there's at least deep etheric knowledge here that they are definitely using. So this could be part of it. Now, when we talk about like structure of this place and motive and intent and things like that, Yeah, I mean, the prison planet idea is very strong. It's very there. That's, I think, one way to view this place. Absolutely, is like a prison planet, and we're just a resource. If you want to tie non-human intelligences into this, then we're a resource for them at some capacity. And so they kind of just, like a fish tank, they just kind of keep us happy and keep us alive and keep us producing more so that they can feed on us, basically, or whatever they use us for. That's one idea. Now,
Right.
as far as the like keeping us here, this whole thing, and I said this on Union of the Unwanted too, and everybody was like, "Who the fuck invited this guy?" Because I was like, I was like, well, maybe it's all to wake us up. Like maybe it's all part of us, and maybe the bad people are actually here to wake us up and to serve as a good thing because you could see it, observably.
I've
There's
considered this as well. Yeah.
yeah, and now it looks like that's kind of what's been happening, and it seems like and you could walk through the phases of this, that as it pertains to spirituality and what that would look like when viewed in that lens. So if you think about it, like lockdowns were a way to go home and do shadow work. That was your time to deal with your shit, to heal your traumas, and so that you could level up and be ready and more mindful for the next wave of awareness that's coming your way. So really it plays its role, and the scarier it gets over there, the more people run away from it, the more people accrue that are more like-minded, that are more positive, that are more community oriented. Then this is where they get crazier, which pushes more people over there. It's almost like they're like shaking the bin. They're like, okay, how many of you are going to run out? Oh, only a few this time. Okay, well, this is happening. And then the few more run out, and they're like, oh, okay. And so it's like they're tired of it too.
They
You know what
want
I
to
mean?
just turn the whole can over and say, "Oh, you get out."
Exactly, but
Right.
this is the thing. They're tired of it too. Back to the Matrix. Think of the Mr. Smith whenever he was talking to Morpheus. He took his earpiece out. He was desperate. He wanted out of the Matrix. He wanted it to end in whatever way was possible. He didn't care. It wasn't about him versus them. It was them versus the creator, or them versus the prisoner, this prison of this Matrix, right? They were prisoners in. And so this is, I think, where this whole thing is and what this is right now. It just so happened to join, no coincidences, but it just so happened to join with this Aquarius thing. It just so happened to join with Pluto's return, and even when you point out astrology to people, they're going to go, that's bullshit. But millionaires do think astrology is bullshit. Billionaires know that that's when they make all their moves. Billionaires have astrologers, millionaires do not. So there's
Right.
something to it. Again, it points back to this esoteric knowledge, or this etheric energy that's here that people do know about. And I think every layer of the 3D is an inversion of reality to keep you stuck there. And that's why it's so hard to break out of. But it's necessary. This is why it's perfect, is because the ego structures that you go through in early days, the traumas, all of it, necessary. Because then you awaken, and then you figure your shit out, and then you're ready for when stuff like this happens. You could see it for what it is. You're like, yeah. It's not gonna bum me out.
Just
It's gonna
curious,
awaken.
what did the expanding reality guys? Because excuse me, not expanding reality. The uh Union of the Unwanted guys. What did they say? Because I know them quite well, all in good
Yeah,
fun. What was their reaction? I could see Charlie going, "What the fuck?"
yeah, it was, and it was funny too because Sam was out that day, and so Charlie invited me right after I had him on my show, and so he invited me for the first time. I was super pumped, of
Great
course,
guy,
so
yeah, great,
cool,
great crew.
so cool. And then I'd throw that out there, and it was like half crickets. But really, it was like, who the fuck invited this guy? They just want to hear, and I get
Right,
it. And I have to say this too. I love all those guys. They're all, beautiful, and we need this. This is very important
right.
to understand. That I'm not saying don't Paul Revere, because Paul Revering is necessary to get people out of the third dimension. You've got to be loud enough to for your voice to reach the stubborn ears of the third dimension. You've really got to holler, and you've really got to scare the piss out of them. And so for the people that exist in that dimension, for us, by the way, and continue to make sure that they're fighting the good fight, they're holding the line, they're making sure that people who don't choose to participate in that on either side still retain their sovereignty. This is very important because those heroes are exactly that, heroes. And I'm a big fan of your Jordan Maxwell's, your Charlie Robinsons, your Santos Bonacci's, they're David Icke's. These are very important people. They have a very tough burden to carry because they carry it at the sacrifice of their own personal sanity, because they are in a place of retaining toxicity to make sure that you guys can wake up. So I want you guys to kind of understand that about people like your Alex Joneses, no matter what you feel about that guy, the people that get passionate about making sure that you know the truth it's a hard burden to carry.
They're
It really
inhabiting
is.
that toxic aura, if you will, or that toxic vibrational state because of the fact that they need to re-disseminate it afterwards.
And it's necessary. It's a very necessary part of this entire experience. So God bless them, man. I mean, because they
Right.
retain it and then they still have beautiful relationships with people. They don't let it get them down. And I'm not wired that way. I used to be wired that way. I'm not wired that way anymore. I just
Mm.
took it on as toxicity too much. And so we'll talk all about it. I'm definitely the
This is,
lighthouse.
if I could say as well, this is why it's been said, it's been speculated, even right now, again, how coincidental that, or ironic that it's only being quote unquote publicly discovered now, that when you say, for example, walk into your house when you have when you're in a great mood or whatever, your pet comes to you, they feel great or whatever, and everything's great. But when you're in a really dark, whether it's angry or depressed mood, something down, your pet doesn't recognize your aura.
Yeah.
That's right. And then they kind of run. Maybe they'll come up to you when you walk into the door. They'll ask for a pet, but then they'll scurry off. Right.
Yeah,
Whereas if you were in a great mood, they want to stay there with you.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's a vibe thing, like anything. And you could say this with anyone. You know, maybe you come home and your wife comes up to you and you're in a bad mood. Well, she's just going to give you your space. She's going to read it immediately and go, "Oof, you know, I'm going to give you your time and give you your space. I'll be here when you're ready." And so
Right.
this goes for anything. I mean, think about it when you're dating somebody or courting someone. You know, when we were younger, you could go and you just get desperate. You know, you start calling too much or texting too much or being too needy. Like these are things that no one wants any part of. And so
Mm.
you can view this in any relationship, especially with the universe. Now, this is where we talk about manifestation, back to your quantum intent and stuff, because that is where you are literally bringing things about in your life by altering yourself, and quantumly, things will pop up and interact with you in a different way. It's a different way to interface and be way more participatory with this place, which is also what the fifth dimension is all about. It's learning that
You can argue
have
that this
power.
conversation even does that exactly, as well as
Absolutely.
people listening or watching this later on. But Nils, you wanted to jump in, brother?
Yeah, I totally agree on everything you said, Brandon. But real quick, um, so especially with that, with all that evil being necessary, I completely agree with that. Maybe lizard-like or reptilian in origin, but I think it's necessary to raise, at least in our solar system, the consciousness and vibration. But going back to the Van Allen belt and the quarantine, I think the time on that is ticking, and it's ticking quick. And I don't know, you're probably familiar with all that solar flares and that's coming up, and that kill shot and everything that goes alongside with it. So I think that that will no doubt will occur. It's just a matter when in the next couple of years, but I think that will actually you know lift that quarantine from our planet. And then there is that possibility of in my beliefs of our Earth becoming that Eden, or like that ideal place. What's your thought on that?
So there's a few thoughts on this, and again, great question. So if we're living, it all has to do with how you view your reality. So if we're living on a spinning ball hurling through space, yes, there perhaps is this barrier around us that we can't get through. It's been recognized by NASA. You can even hear NASA scientists today on the ISS with their green screen glitches telling you that they can't wait to solve the Van Allen radiation belt problem so that they can get out of low Earth orbit, forgetting that we've already done that several times with several missions back in the 70s and 60s. So, you're obviously being lied to. But again, why? So, another angle to take on this, though, have you guys ever heard of the plasma apocalypse? There's a guy who does a great channel on this.
No, but
Plasma apocalypse.
if you could please
Plasma apocalypse.
explain that to us, would be great.
I would love to, because this ties into Tartaria, Devil's Tower, Giants, everything. So, there's an idea that goes that there's this thing called the plasma apocalypse, and it is cyclical. It comes around every now and then, and basically above our plane, whatever this is, there's a dome, and above that is waters, like they say in the Bible, and that there is a plasma basically that's up there, and every now and then, it's a cyclical thing, there's a hole that opens up near the North Pole, and plasma pours down as red plasma shoots up. And what this is, or vice versa, blue plasma shoots up, red plasma comes down. And what this is like evil forces or dense energies invading this place, blue plasma, the energy of the earth, fighting it off. But it encapsulates the entire inside of the dome and recrystallizes for a new utopia here. But as it does this, you get things like the flood. You get these deluge stories of cataclysms that just end this place, and that gravity turns off for certain people, and you just float out into nothing. That things are swirling around and it's chaotic. Volcanoes are going off. Giants are going off, and it's crazy.
Could this
So
potentially explain such satellite images?
yes, it would. So it would. So, and also this goes back to the structure of, I don't know if you guys have ever seen that like leaked video of the Mason that's giving you a breakdown on the actual structure of reality. And he draws like a circle, and then he draws a disc in the middle of it, and underneath the disc, like, is the inside of our planet, but it's not a planet, it's a disc. And through that hole shines the black sun, which is opposite our sun. And that's how they rotate, with our land masses as the fulcrum at the center. And that energy comes out of that.
Would
And
this
that's
be a
what, yep. So there's a more flat plane way of looking at it, but yes, basically that's the concept. I don't know if you can Google just plasma apocalypse. The dude on YouTube, it's fascinating. He's got, I don't know how many followers, but he's amazing.
plasma apocalypse?
And it's just a really cool theory.
Brandon, does the visual you're describing look like this?
Yes, so something like that. That's
Yeah,
perfect.
Manly P. Hall's Secret Teachings of All Ages. So that's
Could you
the-
hold that
the-
up for the audience, real? I'm going full screen for you.
Yeah.
So this
There you
right
go.
here, Brandon, that's a better
Yep.
visual. Right.
Better than what this dude was talking about. And basically there's a hole there. Now, I mean, the Box Saga, who I just had Andy Rouse from Deep Share on, and we touched on it at the very end. But it's
Oh,
this whole thing.
Andrew, yeah, he's great. Love the guy.
Great dude. It came out today, so you guys check it out. And we were kind of touching on this at the end of the show, and this was like where the myths of where humans started, our origin, and actually it's the origin of our language, and that's where it gets really interesting. So there's this idea that that's where it started. Now, if we go back to the flat earth thing just for a second, just because, again, I'm not a flat earther. I really feel like I have to say this, but I also have to say that I think that one of the things that I'm most entertained by the thought of is that energy or new suns are born out of the North Pole, which is really a giant hole. And so suns are born, they spiral out slowly on this very long cycle. And
Sort
as
of
they
like
do,
a donut toroid field.
exactly. And as they do, they heat up a ring in an area that then reveals land masses. It becomes habitable, that has geothermal activity going on underneath it. So new land's being created, ice is being melted. And then that ring, as that sun's proximity goes away from that center birthplace, then it melts a new ring. And now there's an ice wall in between the two rings. And perhaps this is what higher consciousness is. It's a physical thing. It's where when you leave this place, you elevate a new consciousness. And as we ascend, or ripple out, perhaps is how we could put it, this is also where like the idea of migration of species comes from, where the Mayans go, where the Aztecs go. They migrated it out to another ring where there's all this extra landmass.
By definition, that was their ascension.
Exactly. So ascension could be outscension is one way to put it. Now, if you also think of this in context of UFOs, then perhaps they're coming from the extra land. And this is another thing, that if they are coming from extra land that's accessible by you dumb humans, these stupid monkeys here, that maybe the Van Allen radiation belts is kind of a tall tale, or maybe a thing that's not real. Maybe we can just saunder on over the ice wall to their little area and screw up their party, you know, put our dick in the punch bowl. They would tell you then that this place, maybe everybody's in on it, that they just know that in the third dimension, they can't explain a mortgage to you. They can't tell you that the narrative is this, that they have to follow the rules of this third dimension, which is, we live on a spinning ball, you're not powerful, the government's correct, you can't take care of yourself. You know, all of these dense lessons that you learn here, everyone just kind of plays along. It's kind of like when the aliens come over here, they don't tell you that it's a flat place with extra land. We're right over there and it's way cooler and you can just go there if you want. They're not going to tell you that because they're invested in the idea. They're part of it. It's like when you go over to somebody's house where they take their shoes off when they come inside and they ask you to do that. Like, yeah, you don't do that at your place. Maybe you do, maybe you don't, but you abide by it. You're like, yeah, this is your house. Okay, I'll take my shoes off. Yeah. Oh, just tell them we're from the Pleiades and this isn't a flat thing. Sure, no problem.
Well, that's
Maybe
like
it's something like that.
Right. If I could say very quickly, there's some documents from the 1980s that may corroborate this with respects to some type of centralized database that these ETs, whether they come from ethereal realms or from other planets within this dimension or realm, they have to sort of check in the same way you check into a hotel, but but the hotel managers don't know what you're doing in your room because that's your business. It's the same thing, but they know that you're in the building. Is that what you're trying to say?
I think that's exactly what I'm trying to say. That's a brilliant way to put it. Yeah, absolutely.
It's like Men in Black, right? Where they have the intergalactic, they have to basically have a visa to be able to come here, and they just have to go check in to the authorities, and we don't need to know, like, oh, what's your when you go through it to a new country and you're at the
Intent of
border control.
intent of stay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. What do you?
Yeah.
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 Right.
Are you traveling with any fruits and vegetables?
Right. Exactly.
And so you abide by the laws of that country while you're there, right? And so this is kind of the idea. Maybe if they are here and they're just visitors, like exactly what you said though, guys. I mean, maybe there's just maybe that's what the Van Allen radiation belts is. It's your check-in. They automatically scan your flight log as you come through. You automatically get an update kind of saying, okay, now you're entering Earth. Welcome. Everything's
Do
cool.
you subscribe to that check-in being more artificially created, or more naturally created?
So another thing to this is, if this is the case, then the way you could apply it to like interdimensional travel and stuff like that is the way that you have to dial your frequency down to come here, right? Because it is a
Right.
frequency thing is how the idea goes. So if this is the case, well, maybe when they dial their frequency down to appear here, because you hear these UFO cases of things catching on fire like trees because it was so hot when it came through, because the
Right.
atmosphere it came from kind of came with it a little bit. All this weird stuff, right, about this transition and how they suddenly appear, suddenly disappear. They could be interdimensionally traveling, right? And so in this case, yeah, maybe it's an automatic thing to where when you come here, you just know the rules. And it's not like you have to be told them. That's the way we articulate things to each other. But maybe it's just a thing of like, okay, I understand. Like, I'm here now. I can't just, whip my alien dick out and walk around. There's rules here.
Right.
You have to tell them you're from the Pleiadians. Got it. And it's an automatic thing. Like, you don't even have to struggle with it. There's no like, we're from out there. I mean, the Pleiadians, you never hear anybody say that the entities were confused about their story, or that their stories weren't straight.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
so maybe
very
it's
well
something
said.
like that. I don't know.
That's a very good point. Riel, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, thanks. I'm taking notes as we go through along. So there's things that are brought up. I definitely want to have the opportunity to actually bring them up. So yeah, really interesting. I love the idea that, I don't think that Earth is the center of everything, but I do think that Earth, whatever we want to call it, the realms, densities, etc., is a very unique place. And I've always been fascinated with the seeding concept, the idea that, for it just very generically that you've got like people from the Oriental, you've got Mesoamericans, you've got people from Africa, you've got, so basically like the white, brown, red, black, yellow, just like, and there's the idea that generally speaking, each of those types of humans would generally have their own planet. But in this situation, we actually are all on the same planet. And there's the idea, and I just actually get chills as I'm talking about this, the idea that, there was some cataclysm that happened on other planets for whatever reasons, and they had to be like, oh shit, what do we do? And they just put everybody down on the same planet. And it's like, hey, well, let's see what happens. And then you've got the genetic farmer species. We're told that sometimes it's the mantids, sometimes, that there's like 12 to 20, whatever, higher conscious beings that
Riel,
have
sorry,
that are shareholders basically in the genetic experiment of Earth.
What if it's both? What if it's some species being moved here that have been dialed to higher or lower vibrational states because their planet's been destroyed, and then in addition to that, you also still have beings from other planets?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I've just, let's see, I've got like two or three more things to just mention. The movie Witch Mountain, you mentioned the billionaires have astrologers. The Disney movie Witch Mountain from 1975 actually had a segment where the billionaire of the show, of the movie, was consulting his astrologer. And it's hilarious because they're just throwing in, oh, the vibrations are strong, do it now. Just such weak, like just bare minimum concepts, but clearly something from Walt Disney was telling us about what's really going on. And I don't know if you guys know that movie, but there's talk about the kids being from a solar, not Pleiades, but like a constellation with two suns. Mm-hmm. And I was like, this is 1975. What? So that was wild. I totally agree. Dark night of the soul with the pandemic that we're in. Yep. I completely agree with that idea. You need to work on your shadow self. And for me personally, it was the first time in my life that I wasn't doing anything. And I was just like, oh, why am I hustling so much? Why am I trying so hard to do all these things? No. Let's just go pick up some garbage outside. And then here we are. And that 2 years later, that's led me to where I am right now. So I totally agree.
Great, right. Yeah.
I'm going to definitely look into more the Bach saga and the plasma apocalypse. So that makes me want to ask you if you are familiar with Ari Astulin's work or the Thunderbolts project with the electric universe model, and then Ari Astulin trying to identify the first memory of human consciousness. And his project is extremely fascinating. He's somebody that I want to be looking getting on the show in the near future. But yeah, that's it. Oh, also, sorry, North Pole. It's the Saturn hexagon. Like, can we
Yes.
talk about that a little bit? Draw some parallels between the Earth North Pole, the stars, and the Saturn North Pole.
Yeah, absolutely. So in reverse, North Pole, it does have that hexagon in it, which looks like a cube. You know, that's a cube, a 3D cube. If you look at it like that, which is where all the Saturn worship comes from. That's where the Mecca. So yes, if you draw those lines on there, you can see it. It's a cube. So that's where they get the black cube of Saturn. That's what Mecca is all about. That's what all of that is. So there is definitely Saturn worship, and the electronic universe is fascinating, where Saturn, used to be the old sun, and then the sun kicked the Saturn out, and it's fast. There you go. Yeah, there you go. Fascinating. So that's where they get the black sun from. As far as electronic universe, love it. Don't know enough about it, but definitely want to know more. Andy Rouse from DeepShare would be your guy to talk to about Bach Saga specifically. Plasma Apocalypse, I'll send you the YouTube link. As far as what goes on in the 3D with concepts, think of it like this, and I'm just going to kind of bring it back to this first thing that we talked about. They're being explained it because they're being explained it they read at a 3D level. Think of it that way. So yes, there are these huge concepts in here, but they have to be minimized. They have to be watered down to be palatable and to even not come across as gibberish at all or throw any red bells or alarms, because think about it, predictive programming again happens on both sides. Like, you have to get this knowledge about, let's say, manifestation and how it's your thoughts. Well, really it's your feelings, but you don't learn that until later. You know what I'm saying? You can't learn it's your feelings when your thoughts are in chaos. You need that understanding first, and then you get to the feelings part of it. So it wasn't wrong. You needed to go through that step first to get to the other part, but you needed that foundational understanding. So this is what these difficult concepts that are conveyed in religion, anything else really.
Geometry, could this be why geometrically they could be conveyed in this dimension, but then, or in this realm, but they may not be able to be described in a physics or mathematical tone?
Yes, and it's kind of like what you say about the plasma. So there is some plasma ancients who've known about this, and this is where you get that. I don't know, Dave, if you can pull this up. You know what I'm talking about the stick man, and it's got the two rings next to it. The two
Dan Winter
circles.
just did an extensive interview with Elena Denon, and they analyzed that exact glyph that you're talking about, how it appears in like 9 different cultures that
Yes.
date back thousands of years. That's incredible. And it's also supposed to represent the Holy Grail as well, and it's all the same plasma physics, plasma geometry.
That's exactly it. Now, that on the far left is the plasma experiment. That's what it looks like when plasma is formed. On the right, those three, that's going to be what these cultures drew, independent of each other, by the way. Well, we're told that they're independent of each other.
Right.
And so this is what they're talking about with this. Now, this is another thing about the plasma apocalypse. Now, also, when you look at this, you can see that the man is in the center with the plasma rotating around them. This also could be that you're the only one here. You're it. So the world does revolve around you because your perception
Hence
is
the
the
donut
thing.
toroid field.
Yeah, your perception is what is creating this entire reality, which again leads me back to my consensus reality thing. We don't live in the same place. It's like we're co-collectively creating in the same playground, but it's all different colors and shit.
So,
Cool.
Brandon, interesting note. I wonder if you have heard that those 2 dots on the side of the humanoid creature, depending on how high up those are in relation to the body, they were able to determine, the scientist that Dan Winter references was able to determine where that culture was latitude-wise on the Earth. Because when they were looking up at the plasma beings that they were seeing, that correlated their glyphs.
That makes sense.
So yeah, I'll send you the link between him and Elena Denon, and she's like the channeler that he corroborates with his own science that believes that the stuff is true about the Galactic Federation kicking out the Dracos, and so he has a presentation specifically on that, and I'll send you that link after.
Thank you, dude. That's awesome. And that's what's so cool about this. None of these theories negate each other. It's like, yes, we're all one unity consciousness, but if you break that down into many different parts to experiencing itself in this reality, of course. And what's even cooler about this is if you think of it on a quantum level, just the fact that we're discussing it makes it real. It's created somewhere. So this could be then created here or created for another version of Earth. And I think we talked about this last time, Dave. That could be everything we're doing here as souls, as creatures, as entities, is creating our experience in the next life. So you're here to just kind of design your next life. Now, what's challenging probably about that is you only get the reference of here. So your next life is going to look pretty damn similar to this, which is maybe why you can get sort of a Groundhog Day type of a phenomena going, to where when you die, you are creating your new reality, but you create it from a reference point of what you know. So you then just spit out of your mom's vagina again, and then you do this all again, you know what I mean? And maybe you make different choices. Maybe this time fleas aren't there, you know, or cancer's gone or something like that, you know? I think there's a limitation as far as what you can create in the next one, depending on what dimension and what we're talking about here. But if you can create a reality in which you can consciously visit and exist in it, then it would be pretty cool that this would be the model that it would work out. Here, it's just like your place to gather all your, you know, tools and thoughts and what you likes, what you don't likes, you know, stuff like that.
You seem
And
to
then you
be
apply it to your new world.
right. You seem to be describing exactly what I think on our end, the Gen Z audience is probably tired of hearing me say over and over, but using the example of concentric circles. So for
Yeah.
example, let's say we're in the center one, maybe this ring represents that of another dimension that we could say, for the sake of, you know, under visualizing in our mind, is, say, quote unquote higher than the one we're at right now. And that would be able to explain the physics side of what in this dimension we call, I guess you could say, sacred geometry, if you will. Now, I'm not saying that is the case. I'm just giving an example. Would that be somewhat illustrative and accurate to what you're saying?
I love it. It would be a great visual representation for it, and especially if you're thinking that each of those rings is a lifetime, and if each of those colors represent a vibrational frequency at which you learn in that lifetime. So let's say that you're born pure. The next one, 2D, let's say. Very dense, very heavy. 3D, little lighter, but still pretty dense. 4D, going back to black, going dark. Learning, dense learning, we'll put it that way. And then your white would then be an alternating representation, just like the ripples on the pond there.
Let's get one with colors, sure.
There you go.
Yeah,
Maybe that's the way that the actual ascension chart looks, you know, because you're going to spiral out and encounter similar situations, but they're only going to present themselves against to lock in your new vibration, to
We're
see
also
if you're ready, basically.
right, and we're also inadvertently describing fractals, whether we realize it or
Yes,
not.
for sure.
Right. Riel, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, so I love this. Like I honestly feel like I'm getting downloads while we're having this discussion. I'm so grateful to have this platform to share. And I love like the idea that we are, you know, these conversations are expanding the reality of everything. We're putting the thoughts out there, and then, you know, even I think that we're just, yeah, sending the thoughts out there. People are radio transmitters, etc. So those concentric circles, I love that you always bring this up, Dave. And I want to touch on the architecture of Atlantis, how that is a notorious aspect of it. And I wonder how Atlantis, the timeline with Atlantis and Tartaria and the Bok saga. I would love to get into that, as well as dendrochronology. That is actually, if you're familiar, that's how the rings of trees to identify, like Dave, you can actually look this up. It's Dendro chronology. It's how you actually measure the lifespan of a tree using the concentric circles of within you cut the tree off. So now are trees these majestic beings that somehow are tied into the Atlantean architecture and all these metaphors
Well,
that we're
this goes
talking
to
about
what Brandon was saying. It's been in front of our face all the time. And
Yeah.
as what doctors say too, we get our best tricks from nature, which is why I said in a recent members episode, why did we, on the surface at least, which I don't think we did really, but why did we stop at just, you know, mimicking birds for our fighter jets? Why did we stop there? Of course, I don't think we did. We just classified the rest, but.
Yes,
Yes,
absolutely.
as
And
above,
just
so below.
totally. And then Dave, I don't know if we've ever talked about, but you know how the focus on ions, ionization, all that stuff.
Yep.
Well, it's interesting. The word attention, you have attent and then ion. So I don't know, like that ion suffix at the end of these words, how that correlation there, when you add just the ion to any of these words, all of a sudden Yeah, so that's real.
Can I just say as well, you just gave me an idea there. Now, again, I'm not a physicist, but that would arguably describe topology, where again, magic occurs within certain fields of frequencies of so conveniently ionized air pockets.
And back to geography, back to geomancy.
And then just one last thing about the word church and religion. How it seems like that's, I think it was almost like, I don't like its term derogatory, I find, because it's not going to be helpful if we're trying to talk to people, but the sheeple, three-dimensional perception of things. The word church itself, as Dan Winter explains, the UR in church is actually ancient Draco-Orion bloodline. So that word itself is about worshiping the ancient dragon. That's what a church really is about. So that's an interesting paradigm. And then the word religion, Ra, Le, Jin. Again, the ION at the end of that with Ra at the beginning. And Ra is Thoth, is Hermes, is all of these ancient Enki, Enlil from the Sumerian, the genetic creators. So it's so cool how this is all coming together. But that's, I just wanted to throw that in there.
It is, and I love it. I'm going to go with you on this. So another one would be the Vatican and their Vatican Hall, how it looks like a serpent on the inside. Okay, well, serpent, dragon, reptilian, all of these things are kind of interchangeable as far as symbols go. And so perhaps that's something to do with it as well.
I'm sure that we're going to be able to find so many connections.
So many parallels, yeah. It's
fascinating. Man, that's incredible. Also, does anybody else want to jump in with any other questions? Riel, Nils, if you guys had some stuff written down.
Sure, I did. I've got, Nils, you go.
Well, I mean, if you're keen, you can go.
This is great, by the way, guys. You guys are awesome. I'm loving this.
Okay, well, I did want to mention that I'm also not a flat earther, but I have had a recent, a few months ago, I had a discussion and we called it space skepticism, and that's so. I'm not a flat earther. However, I love the concepts of crater Earth and concave Earth. Those are the two paradigms that first got me into questioning what's really going on in the physical cosmology of things. So and that crater Earth, there's a whole series on YouTube where the guy, he started off with using how the moon is actually a parallel of the Earth, and what the moon is basically a refracted mirror image of the Earth. That's all it is, and it's just like holy shit.
The continents on it and everything.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, but
so
he had extra land.
Yeah.
So meaning that the reflection that is shown in that, I didn't mean to cut you off. This is a great point because I just saw this as well. And he had a section of the moon that it was all mapped out to be the United States, Antarctica. I mean, everything was there. Yes. But he also pointed out in that ring was only about a third of the mass of the planet, and that there is extra land out there that he was talking about.
Yes, no, exactly. And so the idea that like Mars, for example, could be another crater on this super massive Earth. And it's interesting because why does Muse, who's one of my favorite bands of all time, why do they have a song called Supermassive Earth? Or I think Supermassive Black Hole.
Black Hole.
Yeah, but they have anyway. So that's just an interesting
one. Well, then to me, that speaks, sorry, if I could say, if I could throw my 2 cents in, that speaks to a larger definition of, well, what do we define as Earth? Have we really been defined the full extent of what we call Earth?
This is it. This is it right here. Yes, we live on Earth, but Earth could be just a territory in this place. I mean, what do they say? The territory is not the map is not the territory, right? So the map of Earth is not all the territory that there is. This is, again, my favorite part about this. I like this space skepticism. I like that a lot because, again, we know NASA's lying. We know it. We just don't know why. And so this is what leads us to conversations about the shape of the universe, about the shape of the planet, about what's going on here, is because we know we're getting lied to. Now, back to a larger picture view of this thing that may just kind of help with some folks out there conceptualize some of these things, would be that these people here, like these baddies, let's just call them the elite, the pedophile, whatever. I had a conversation recently with somebody I respect the shit out of their opinion, so much to the point that this kind of really stuck with me, that maybe it's just that they're stuck here. Maybe we're the powerful ones, and that's what they have to do, is influence us to take whatever path, to keep us, to suck whatever loose they can off of us, but they're stuck in this place. They don't die and then leave. They die and come right back. This also could explain why you see like Putin from 1917 and 1800s, like how people will pull pictures up of influential Hollywood elites, politicians, things like that, and find historical matches to them.
Brother, you're onto something.
Like a Saint Germain.
You and that person you spoke with, whoever it was. I appreciate that because they're actually documents to substantiate, and not just documents as if that's more than just a theory, in my opinion. There is a lot to that we can talk about off air. There's a lot to that.
Like soul templates. I love that.
Templates is the word I was about to
Right.
use next. Beautiful. Again, this is this flow state. I love it, guys. Fucking beautiful. So this could be the way that this is working. And so therefore, like, they're stuck here, so they lie to you. That's their whole deal, is to lie and to give you the inverse, but they're here for you. They're teachers. This is a university. This is a lesson place. And so you get to learn from these teachers what you don't want and what's not true. You get to learn discernment here. That is your greatest lesson that you get to learn, because you're lied to from official sources all the time. And once you figure that out, you then don't know what's going on. You just at least know what's not going on. At least that's not true.
I'd like
Okay,
to slightly
cool.
challenge you. Sorry.
Mhm. No,
Uh,
please.
If sorry, no, finish your thought, please.
That's it. Maybe then that's what it is. That's where the inversion of reality comes from. Is that's what you're here to learn. That's the lesson that you learn. Is how to think of
Okay.
yourself.
All right. So going back to the concentric circles with fractals and, that larger vision, if you will. Actually, let me bring it up for the sake of to visualize for ourselves and for the audience too. But when we take a look at hold on, here we go. So let's say what you're saying right there. We are going through this, and there are others from wherever to teach us, if you will. Do you think there are ones to teach us on behalf of inhabiting a negative experience, and then there are others that are trying to teach us for us to inhabit a positive experience? I say this because I'm going off of alleged gray ETs that are us from the future. Not all of them are, but there's a faction of them that do not want to accept the fate in their timeline, and they're trying to come back here to muddy the waters, so to speak. Now, if that is the case, by definition, because of the yin and the yang hermetic principles and so on and so forth, would there not be a positive element of that to teach us and engage in a positive experience? And again, this would go back to the concentric circles of learning within one realm to understand the expansion going into the next one, or ring, whatever you want to call it.
So I
Do you
will
see what I'm
relay
saying?
this. Phenomenal question, and yes, I absolutely see what you're saying. And the way that I'll explain it is this way. So my mom had 3 boys. So I have 2 brothers. We were all raised in the same home with the same understandings about things, but the same methods of learning did not apply to all 3 of us. My mom had to tailor her learning. Some things were more harsh and more extreme on one of us. One got it right away. Didn't need to be reminded at all.
Right.
This is why you'll get people here that they say, learn their lesson in 1 lifetime rather than 200, but somebody else learns it in 200. I don't think that the term positive and negative can be applicable at this level whenever we're describing just the way it is. And so because positive and negative have emotions and hierarchies attached to them. Now, the way you phrased it was perfect. It's absolutely perfect. But from the view that I take on it now, it's just the means in which it's your delivery system for your lesson. That's it. You're going to learn at a different pace. You're going to understand things in a different way. You read at a 3D level, so you need to be explained things in a 3D level. And even in that, there's a shitload of different ways to articulate things. This is why you have to rephrase yourself sometimes to someone before they can understand what you're saying. Whereas if you would have phrased it that way to anybody else, they would have gotten it right away. You see what I'm saying?
Yes. Now, to politely push back, could that learning system be double-sided?
Absolutely. Oh, everything's double-sided. So
Okay.
even in the good, there's bad, and you can think of it in this way. Back to the manifestation thing, and I've been using the reference lately of the Matrix whenever Neo goes to meet the Oracle. The Oracle tells him, "Do you know why you're here?" And he says, "Yeah, because Morpheus thinks I'm the one." She said, "What do you think?" He said, "I'm not." And she goes, "Sorry, kiddo." So she lied to him, right? It was not true, okay, but it was what he needed to hear. So even
To
though
get
it's
there.
not to get there, correct. So if he was told he was the one, it would have altered the course of history in a way that it would not have presented itself in that way. But he had to figure it out on his own by being told he wasn't, even though he knew deep down he was. So even from an official source telling him something that's a good source, he went to go there for wisdom and knowledge. He got wisdom and knowledge. It's the same thing with the Karate Kid. He wouldn't learn how to wax on, wax off. He was learning how to defend a move. It's bigger. It's scalable. So these lessons, when learned in this way, yes, it's double-sided because it has to be. Your mom loves the shit out of you, but she would smack your ass if you were acting up, right? It didn't mean she didn't love you. Same thing. These lizard shitheads told you to go home, closed your business, wouldn't let you see your grandma when you die, so you'd wake the fuck up. So you'd go home and do shadow work because they love you. This is a way to break all of us out of this nonsense. This is what this is.
Wow. Okay. Got you. Got you.
Maybe. Again, I'm full of shit here. We're just
No,
talking
this is
about
just
the
a debate.
ideas, you know what I
No,
mean?
dude.
I really want to
Great
overemphasize
point.
to everyone listening, like I did last time. I don't believe in any of this shit. I don't know what the fuck's
If
going on.
you're full
I
of
know
shit,
what
then
I'm
that
not.
means everybody else is too, because we're
Well,
all on the same. It's all equal. So
fair.
very
I
very good point. Yeah, and actually, I wanted to ask as well. Do you think that maybe that learning technique or that mechanism may not even be double-sided, but you can even say omni-sided or omni whatever, multiple angles to it? Why limit it to that duopolistic two?
Yes, and it's really when you start to view this place as a mirror of yourself. And when you really, really start to see it that way, that's when the delivery system gets a lot simpler, is because you don't have to be taught lessons in that abrasive way, because you don't need to really receive lessons in that way. It's a maturity. You grow up a little bit. Your eyes get a little bit more adjusted to these concepts. You live in that truth. So therefore, I mean, all confidence is a series of successes. So if you've been successful living your life with this perception, it just begets that, and the universe wants that, and so it sends you more of that. As the idea goes, like attracts like. So whatever you're vibrating at, that's what it does. Now, don't mistake a setback for something that is not what you truly asked for, because all of it's what you truly asked for. Even the happiest of gurus stub their toe on a table and break their toe every now and then. You know what I mean? It's not that it's all puppies and roses. You're still going to encounter 3D things here, because it's still necessary for you to remember that you're here for a reason, that this is what's going on. Perhaps.
I love what you said there. I just wrote this down. Confidence is a series of successes, which
That's
only
right.
speaks to that of which also rather not only speaks to, again, the concentric circles, whether inward or going outward. It's that exact same fluctuation. Nils, please, you want to jump in?
Yeah, so I want to ask you something about that reincarnation cycle, possibly with the moon involved and what have you, if it's not our, the planet we live on. So because that kind of like ties in with those learning cycles, but what's your opinion on that? Right now, since we're obviously here, did we choose to come here on purpose to raise vibrations on this planet, possibly, or for whatever reason? Or like, did we randomly get assigned? Do you think it's like through universal free will you chose to be here, kind of in that sense?
Random's interesting. I think it could be either, to be honest with you. I think that at a high level, you chose to be here. And this is like one of the understandings with unity consciousness that pretty much everyone agrees with, that you're here to have an experience and that you forgot your true nature whenever you're born here. And that's part of the experience, because you have to remember.
Yes.
Right? This is the concept. But as far as it being like a Russian roulette kind of a thing, that's interesting. Because maybe you're like, you know what? On the other side, there's a template, okay? And who knows how detailed this is or what this looks like. We're, again, just articulating crazy spiritual concepts, with human dumb monkey language, okay? And so maybe there's like this template over there where you fill out like a questionnaire and you're like, okay, I want my optimism to be dialed way up, and I want my, goal achieving to be kind of mediocre. Like, I'm going to be super optimistic, but I'm not going to be that great at achieving my goals. So there's these parameters that you set for your experience. Now, to what you said about it being random, this is interesting. I've never thought of it that way, that maybe you could almost like push a button and let it pick all of them randomly for you, to where you're like, man, I've done this ride so many times. I don't care. I've ridden in the front. I've ridden in the back. I've been, in India in the 1500s. I was in Canada, in the 2020s. I got to talk to this crazy guy in Texas. It was awesome. Maybe you've already done all of these things so many times that you're just like, fuck it, roll the dice. Whatever you give me, I'm going to go for it. And then you hop in here and you're like, damn, man, this is intense, but it's kind of cool. Maybe it's part of the experience. Who knows? But I like that.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah, Nils, I've never thought of that either, actually,
Mhm.
because we always hear that, well, it's
Deliberate.
a common that you basically choose in between lifetimes. Essentially, you have your soul, you have your life review, then you get to choose, oh, I'm going to choose my parents, I'm going to choose this lifetime, I choose my soul group because these are the lessons that I need to learn. So I'm choosing this ahead of time, but I don't know how it's going to play out, but I'm giving myself the opportunity as a higher conscious soul to learn the lessons, and as you said, to go through discernment and all that. So that would be interesting if you can just, like, random, and let's just see what happens. But you still might, I would think that you would still have, okay, here's a list of things I have to learn, but I'm going to go blindfolded, and I'm going to really have to go hard on this one of really figuring out, and this is the one that's going to give me the extra karma points. If I can figure it out in this lifetime, here it is. This is my all or nothing. But if I don't, well, I've still got a few more tries. But it's like going double or nothing in a poker game or something like that.
Exactly. I
Totally.
love the concept. It's very interesting. It made me think, man. So great question. Great job. All of these, by the
Thank
way,
you.
have made me think. I mean, all of you guys are just fucking high level thinkers. So this is so cool. I'm just grateful to be able to hang out with y'all. This is great.
Grateful that you came on, man. Well, unfortunately gonna have to wrap it up, but I did want
And
to.
now we're done.
I was just gonna. I was
Thanks for
just.
saying that.
I
Fuck
was
off.
just gonna. I was just gonna say, actually, I think this kind of works out well because for as much as I would love to continue the conversation, we do have another interview. But not only that, I think there's so much that you have incredibly and very well intentionally packed into your responses that I think our audience is gonna have a great time sort of disassembling and piecing together, because this is definitely one of those that I think you can play back a couple times over and catch a couple things in our conversation here. But with that being said, Brandon, brother, could you please tell everyone where and how they can find you and all of your different, I know you're doing some great stuff and there's some stuff you're working on that's not out yet, but yeah.
Oh, yes. Big stuff going on. Thank you again, guys. Brandon Thomas, expandingrealitypodcast.com. That's going to be just everything. That's got links to all socials, Rockfin. We're doing some lives on Rockfin and then replaying them for free on the website. I've also got some too hot for YouTube, some stuff like I had Max Egan on. That one got pulled, so I just threw it over there for free. You can go see the full video. Also, John Paul Rice. I didn't even try. I put up a clip on YouTube and said, get fucked, go somewhere else to listen to it. So there's the website's the best place, and then like I said, we're doing these lives, which is a lot of fun. Bunch of stuff going on, guys, always. And so just come check me out there. I'd love to hear from any one of y'all. And again, these are the best conversations. I've really got to like get my shit together when I come on Gen Z. I was like, okay, this is gonna be great. So I knew you were gonna come with the heat, and you did. I'm grateful for your time. Thanks so much.
I
You guys
can't
are
thank you
awesome.
enough. And
Thank you.
Nils and Riel, of course, I'm sure everyone's very grateful and appreciative for you guys and your fantastic questions as well. So we'll catch you all next time, everybody. Thank you so much.